So, with this next podcast, I'm going to walk you through another emotion. And this time it's the emotion of sadness. And there's so many emotions that go along with that, from grief to loneliness to despair to hopelessness. So, if you've experienced any of those types of emotions and want to learn better ways to manage those emotions or understand how those operate in your life, this podcast is for you.
If you're like me, you know your mind can be your best or your worst friend. Our mind is an amazing tool that can do incredible things, but our mind can also create problems out of nowhere. Sometimes our mind keeps recommending the same solutions to problems even when they aren't working. I see this pattern play out as individuals try to overcome their anxiety, depression, or even struggles with pornography, using approaches that make sense but aren't very helpful. This podcast will show you how real researchers and clinicians are changing the way we approach mental health and reveal helpful research-supported principles designed to help real people with real problems. My name is Dr. Cameron Staley, and welcome to the Life After Series Radio.
So as I prepare for this next podcast, I was checking in with myself and reflecting on the emotions that I'm feeling as I anticipate what I'm about to share with you. Because today I want to walk through the experience of sadness. And I recognized some hesitancy in myself that spending the next 20, 30 minutes reviewing the facets of sadness really goes against our programming, that we've been socialized to avoid uncomfortable feelings. That when someone asks you, how are you doing? The answer is fine, or I'm good. It would kind of violate a social norm to say, actually, I'm really sad. I'm feeling really down. I'm feeling scared. Those are not things that we typically share in response to that standard question of, how are you doing? And yet I think about how common it is to experience emotions like sadness, and yet how uncommon it might be to feel comfortable expressing that emotion to somebody else, or to have somebody express that to you. Often when I hear that emotion conveyed or can sense somebody experiencing sadness, I notice myself kind of jumping into problem solving mode. And really, in my mind, I might be thinking, like, if I can fix this problem, this person won't be sad anymore. But probably what's really going on is I'm uncomfortable with the experience of sadness, and I want to get away from it as quickly as possible. So if I can fix your problem, I don't have to feel this emotion. It's really uncomfortable to me. So today I want to walk you through the emotion of sadness. And this might be something that all of you can identify with, but probably something that we're not that used to identifying, acknowledging, sitting with, sharing, or having a conversation about. This really goes against what we've been taught, that you should just kind of be happy all the time. You should be in a good mood, positive, optimistic, just content with your life. And for me, I'm a pretty optimistic person. I'm always looking at the next opportunity and looking at the bright side, and I'm always hopeful that things are going to get better. And yet, I still experience sadness. That is a part of life. That is inescapable. And sadness has something to teach you. So here we go. So this is from Marcia Linehan's Dialectical Behavior Therapy, from her module on emotion regulation, where she just does a wonderful job walking through the ins and outs of these really core emotions. So let's spend some time with sadness. That is the core emotion here. But there's actually many emotions that are variations of sadness, or different levels of intensity, or different experiences that are close to sadness. So let's talk about some of those. So for some, sadness could manifest as the feeling of despair, which for me can feel like profound sadness, not just I'm feeling sad, but there's nothing else. This is always going to be there. That's often what despair feels like for me. For others, it could be the experience of grief. Often, many times, as people are telling me that they are sad, having this profound sadness that just kind of comes in waves and has been there for a long time, it actually may be more the experience of grief. Grief is an emotion that can hang around for quite a while, and there are lots of things that can trigger that. And yet, we often have a difficult time identifying that experience as grief, and we may be more likely to notice that feeling of sadness, but it may be part of that larger constellation of emotions that we call grief. For others, they may be experiencing disappointment or homesickness can be a part of sadness. Feeling neglected or miserable, feeling in anguish, feeling really hurt. For others, it's the experience of alienation, feeling insecure. Ooh, that's a really strong part of sadness, just feeling insecure about yourself. Other emotions, experience of defeat, or feeling distraught, or not experiencing pleasure. Others could be feeling disconnected from yourself, from your environment, from people in your life. Often people that are experiencing lots of sadness describe it as suffering or the emotion of gloom or unhappiness is another version of sadness. A clinical term that we use to describe sadness that's pretty encompassing is depression or melancholy. One that I hear quite a bit when I'm leading a therapy group is the emotion of loneliness. And it's an experience every time when a member of my group shares their profound experience of feeling alone. And then one by one, people in the circle can identify times in their life where they have felt alone or lonely. And it's incredible to share that moment together, a feeling alone. And it's sharing that moment doesn't completely take that loneliness feeling away, but there is something connecting with sharing that experience because it is so human, it is so relatable. All of us at times experience feeling alone. So those are all different types of words we may use to describe that emotion of sadness, or it's a different variation or different intensity of that core feeling of sadness. So now let's talk about what are events that can bring on this emotion of sadness or that can prompt this feeling within inside of us. One of the most powerful ways to bring on really strong sadness or grief is to lose someone that is close to you. And that could be due to death of a loved one or a breakup or somebody moving away or someone's health deteriorating where their relationship is changing. But losing somebody can bring out really strong feelings of sadness. It could also be things not being what you expected. That often we have expectations for how our first job will go, or a dating relationship, or this career we thought we'd love, or that new car, or we were really excited about a class that didn't work out, and having our expectations unmet. Sometimes the higher the expectation is and the lower the reality is, kind of that discrepancy between those two can bring about feelings of sadness. We talked about homesickness as a variation. So that separation from people that you love, people that you care about. I'm someone that doesn't experience a lot of homesickness, but there was a period of time where I was finishing up graduate school and my internship and getting ready to start my first job. And so there was about a week to 10 days where I wasn't with my wife and my 2 kids at the time. And that was a different experience for me to not see them every day. And even though it was a week or 10 days, I felt so sad being separated from them. That disconnection brought on a lot of sadness. And I found myself compelled to do lots of things just to fill the time and distract myself, things that I don't typically do. I think I remember going to the movie theater like every day because my family wasn't there. So that separation from them can bring on that feeling of sadness. It may also be getting things that you don't want in your life. So not excelling in your career, your work, relationships, or having people kind of dump their things on you, that can lead to sadness. It could be that you've worked really hard for things in your life and you don't get that promotion. You don't get that grade, you don't get that achievement. Relationships may not be successful. Your children that you're trying to parent may not listen to you. It could also be much deeper than that, not getting your needs fulfilled in your life. From basic needs, from employment to housing to adequate food, but also to having safe, supportive, healthy relationships in your life. Other events that prompt feelings of sadness could be being rejected or disapproved or excluded from people in your life, from your community, from your family. Feeling powerless or helpless. There are certain people that tend to absorb the emotions of others. So if someone close to you is feeling really sad or is suffering, you may absorb or sense some of that emotion for yourself. There may be times where you are alone or isolated or feel like an outsider. Or you could be ruminating about the past, thinking about all the things that you haven't received in your life, all those losses that have occurred, people that were once in your life and no longer there. So there are many different situations that we can encounter that can bring on these feelings of sadness, depression, grief, despair, misery, homesickness, or loneliness. And as I kind of read through that list of prompting events of sadness, each one of those statements was associated with an experience in my life. And I think about it, it wasn't a stretch for me to identify a time in my life that fit those examples that evoked one of those emotions. Those are natural responses to these events that all of us will experience in our life. So those are things that occur outside of us. Now there's also things that occur internally. These are often the things that I work on with people in a counseling context, that we may not be able to rekindle a relationship that's over or to somehow repair a situation where it's beyond damage. But we can work on how we are interpreting events for ourselves. So some of those events that occur internally for us that bring on feelings of sadness could be believing that if you are separated from somebody, that's going to last forever or a really long time. So if you have a child that goes off to college, you may have a belief in your head where I'm never going to see them again. And that kid that I've raised, that I love, that I enjoy, is never going to be part of my life anymore. That's going to bring out a lot of sadness. Or if somebody gets sick and they're in the hospital for an extended period of time, or somebody moves away for training, or a best friend has to relocate, change schools, that belief that, wow, we are now separated, which is pain. There's sadness associated with that. But what can magnify that is that belief that this is going to be forever, or there's nothing that I can do about it, or I will never have that person in my life again. That belief can accelerate or bring on those feelings of sadness. You may also have a belief that you won't be able to get your needs met in your life. That no matter what you do, people won't listen to you or validate you or be there for you. They're going to continue to reject you, criticize you, judge you for things that you've done or things that have happened to you. So having that belief that you will not get your needs met is just like collecting those clouds of sadness and just holding them around you. You may see events in your life as hopeless, that this situation is not good, that it may never get any better. So that belief that your situation is hopeless can also bring on those feelings of sadness. Some other things are about beliefs about who we are as a person, our own identity. So if we believe that we are unlovable or worthless or a danger to other people, that we will somehow disappoint them, that belief is going to bring about a lot of sadness, where you believe that you are not of value as a human. So those are some of the events that happen internally that can also prompt those feelings of sadness. So as with any emotion, these are biological experiences. So things change in our body that are clues that we may be feeling sadness or one of these variations. So some of those could be feeling like crying, or feeling empty or hollow inside, and that could be in your chest, in your stomach. It also could be loss of interest or pleasure in things that you used to enjoy. Often sadness is accompanied by a lot of lethargy, difficulty getting out of bed, really low energy, just feeling tired or exhausted. Often when I'm working with somebody who's experiencing depression or grief, often there's just a lot of exhaustion. And that can be physical exhaustion, but also mental and emotional fatigue. There also could be challenges with breathing or even dizziness, difficulty swallowing. All of those things can be physical cues that you are experiencing sadness or one of the variations of that. So as you experience sadness, there's many ways that we express that, or many behaviors that are evoked from that experience of sadness. So with any emotion, it's putting our actions in motion. So with sadness, you may avoid things that are unpleasant. You may avoid sifting through old photos of people that you cared about. Or if you've lost somebody close to you, kind of going through their belongings or their closet. You may, in some ways, stay in bed or be inactive. You may have difficulty moving, so even your movements are slow. So your walking is slower, your speech can be a lot slower, writing can be labored, everything can take a lot more time. Often when we're sad, we have this instinct to withdraw from other people, even though sadness can be so connecting. That I often reflect, even sometimes during a session with somebody in counseling, that, wow, we are feeling a lot of sadness in this moment. And yet part of me appreciates that. It's a very connecting emotion, a very powerful emotion. It's very genuine, very raw, very sincere. And I find myself appreciating my days where I spend a lot of it feeling sad, because that can be a very connecting emotion. And yet often our instinct is to withdraw from people when we're feeling sad, that we should put on a happy face, put on that mask or that facade, that people don't want to see us this way. And yet sometimes I check myself where it's like, do I prefer spending time with people who are sad? Like when people are overly happy, sometimes I'm like, I'm not interested in that. And I'm a pretty happy person. I enjoy life. And yet I enjoy happiness, but I also appreciate the experience of sadness. It's very human. But if you find yourself wanting to withdraw, that might be what sadness is kind of compelling you to do. You may also avoid activities that you used to really enjoy, and that further can perpetuate those experiences of sadness. You may find yourself giving up or not persevering as much as you're used to in the past. Talking about sad experiences in a really slow or quiet way. You may see yourself kind of slumping or frowning, but also sadness can bring on crying or even sobbing. That sadness can fill up our body, and it just really compels us to kind of break down and communicate it in that way. So sadness I found to be one of the more powerful emotions where you may want to hold it in or push it down or put on that happy face. But I haven't found that to be an effective way to allow sadness to do its thing. Sadness is trying to communicate something to you, to get a need met, to connect you with other people. And just trying to neglect it or distract yourself or hold it down, it doesn't just go away. It doesn't just vaporize. Sadness has a long shelf life, I guess I would say, is it finds a way to stick around until we take the time to listen to it, to understand it. So after kind of those expressions of sadness or those actions that it compels us to do, there are after effects. And so what I think about after effects are emotions kind of love themselves. So if you're feeling sad, you may listen to sad music in an effort to feel sad longer or to feel more sad, or listen or watch a sad movie, or read some sad poetry, or think about sad events in your life. That once an emotion is activated, we often do things to stay in that emotional state, which may seem kind of odd, but emotions kind of love themselves. They enjoy kind of feeding them when they're there. And sadness is no different. So some of the after effects of sadness is you may have a challenge remembering happy times, or you may feel irritable or a little more touchy around other people. You may be searching for things you've lost or have a negative outlook. You may then start to blame or criticize yourself or other people, and that's going to further perpetuate those feelings of sadness. For some people that experience more on the depression side, they may get stuck in that ruminative cycle where they keep revisiting losses in their life or regrets or periods that haven't turned out well, and that further maintains that feeling of sadness. For some, sadness can be so profound that they have difficulty sleeping or eating, or their digestion is disrupted in some way. So I found that sadness can really hang out for quite a while. And even as I talk about sadness, I even notice within myself like slowing down and feeling more heavy. Usually when I'm doing these podcasts, I just have a lot of ideas and I just want to throw them out there, and I have to like slow myself down to make sure I'm talking through this and this is making some sense. But as I review this emotion of sadness, I feel myself internally going at a slower pace. That there is almost something here to honor, to respect, to listen to. That this is something that when I feel sadness, it's like something significant is happening here. There's a relationship that was meaningful that I am separated from in some way or don't have access to. And that can bring out really strong feelings of sadness. And so I might have an instinct to avoid that feeling or neglect it or withdraw from other people. But some of the alternative is to recognize that, wow, sadness might be evidence that this relationship was really important to me. And I don't have it right now, or I don't have access to it, or it's changed. Sometimes with parenting, as your kids age, you can experience sadness during different milestones where you're excited at learning to walk and talk, or start to go to school, or start to drive or date. But with those milestones could be sadness, where there's that recognition that there is something that's lost. Part of that earlier stage of childhood may be coming to a close. So even though you're excited and grateful that your children are healthy and well and developing, there also can be some sadness there. I think we live in a culture where we're kind of taught that feeling things like sadness is somehow wrong or bad or not okay or not acceptable. And so we try to ignore it. We try to put on that happy face and move forward. But I think it is important to recognize that there are a lot of sad moments, that it is healthy to grieve a loss. It's normal to feel lonely at times when you are rejected or not feeling understood. Suffering is a part of life. Depression is a result of losing things that are meaningful in your life. Those are normal parts of life. So when you're feeling this might be a time to reflect on those emotions Maybe spend some time journaling about those events, finding safe people in your life that you can share these things with. If you notice yourself feeling like you're separated from or um, losing important relationships in your life, instead of feeling stuck in that cycle, make an effort to reach out and attempt to reconnect with yourself, but also people in your life. But I think the one thing I'd want you all to remember is these emotions, although they may not feel good, they may not be pleasant, they are natural reactions to this existence. That's difficult. So as you're feeling these things, don't pile on them by getting down on yourself for feeling down or feeling sad that you're feeling sad. Allow yourself to feel these emotions, acknowledge them, share them with other people. And if other people are sharing these emotions with you, don't do what I tend to do, which is let me fix that so I don't have to feel it. Take a moment to honor those feelings and really share that moment with somebody. That's something that I really appreciate about my work as a psychologist is in that mode, instead of my knee-jerk reaction, got to fix it, I actually can sit there and spend some time with somebody and really understand that emotion and connect at such a human level that can be really profound. So I hope that you found this helpful. I'm grateful for Marsha Linehan and her dialectical behavior therapy, where she's puts together really helpful ways to walk through the complexities of emotions like sadness. So take care, everyone.
Hey, thanks for listening. Please remember to rate and subscribe. I know you might be facing some issues in your life or know someone who is. Issues like anxiety, challenges in dealing with emotions, or other compulsive behaviors like unwanted pornography. And I know it's tough to talk to people about problems. Difficult to stare those obstacles down that we face in life and to really know how to deal with them. It's hard to know what to say and when to say it. And then when that moment you finally reach out to family and friends happens, sometimes it falls flat. I haven't found many programs teaching effective strategies like mindfulness, how to improve relationships, and ways to address unwanted pornography viewing through research-supported principles. So whether you simply want to help with a problem like unwanted pornography, difficulty responding to emotions, or just want to understand the world of someone struggling with porn a little better, head over to lifeafterpornography.com and get in on the next training. There you'll learn the exact same strategies individuals addicted to pornography used to transform their lives by implementing principles from evidence-based treatment shown effective in research for reducing unwanted pornography viewing. You'll learn the secrets, the myths, the enemies to recovery, and the LAP framework for dealing with unwanted porn viewing that we call WAVE. If that's something that interests you, click the link in the description or just head over to lifeafterpornography.com. I'm Dr. Cameron Staley. See you on the inside.